Sure. I mean, first of all, I should say that I'm not a natural traveller. I'm quite lazy. I don't like holidays. I find them stressful. I tend to, I don't know about anybody else, but I tend to approach a holiday, right, I've got to get the Rough Guide and the Lonely Planet, and I've got to go to that restaurant. And, you know, I mean, you mentioned that Tampa reminded you a little bit of Cuba, Rose. And I was in Havana years ago, and you think, yeah, I've got to go and see that monument, because, you know, it's a temple to socialism, and I'm interested, and it's 38 degrees and very humid, but you've got to do it.
There's that pressure.
But when I travel for work, it's a much more simple process. I go there, and the first thing is the job, and I'm usually only going because I've been thankfully invited, and that's nice. And then you sort of work out how things work, and it usually comes down to economics, time, and meteorology is the obvious one. I mean, I lived in Seville for a year. That didn't come about through artistic reasons. That was an migration situation. But when I arrived there, it was March, and it was already 25 degrees. And I arrived, and I was fortunate enough to be able to get a very old Siviano house, in the sense that it was large enough for me to set up a studio. And I went there with this London head on me that I was going to go right straight to the art shop, which was the best art shop in Seville, of course, and it was supplying conservation materials for all the museums. And I said, can I have some rose madder? And they said, si, senor. But not today, we don't have it today. I said, well, when will you have it? Oh, maybe in a month. No, I can't work like this. Meanwhile, the temperature's moving up, and by sort of July, it's 40 degrees, 42 degrees. And nobody does anything in 42 degrees. And I had to completely sort of change my gearing, you know, and actually just think, well, actually just be here, soak up the culture, learn the language for a start, which I did. Siviano Spanish is extraordinary. I don't know if you've ever had to deal with it.
I'm Latino, and it's very hard for me to even
yeah,
understand.
I know, but it's you know, much clearer.
Yes.
Anyway, so the heat was alucinante. It was, you know, I mean, dry, but so
The buildings must have become really relevant then.
well, my building was beautifully designed.
Yeah.
It was an old Siviano building that had light wells, and the walls are this thick.
Yeah.
So people say, oh, the light must have been fantastic in Seville. Well, for me, I'm an albino, for goodness sake. And it was just, so what did I do? I went and brought my UV lights over and shut the shutters and worked in darkness, which provoked this particular installation, which has been to many places. That's been to Japan, it's been to the Czech Republic, it's been to New York.
And
So it was a kind of
are
a
there
bit of a
any
paradoxical situation.
aspects of this painting that were drawn from local imagery, or is it you discovering things about yourself?
They are utterly random. It's called A Boy's Own Story, and it's been in process for 25 years.
Yeah.
And I just add to it every now and again. And they can be the most mundane things in life. Sometimes they've now become about, they became about my son's childhood, my childhood, just little random things. And I'm sure there will be things probably related to flamenco and
I think
rum, you know, in Seville. All sorts of things. You'll probably see some bottles out there of various spirits that might relate to various places around the world. Yeah.
But it's interesting. I mean, in the absence of being given that space to work or having the opportunity to work there, that work never would have been made. I mean, I think that these ecologies of, or maybe it wasn't an artist residency per se, but what I'm saying is that these ecologies of cities and these spaces that exist, that are preserved, that are then inhabited by artists, are fundamental to the production.
I think there's a good case for that, but I'm going to be a bit of a fly in the ointment in that respect. I mean, one of my favourite artists is Henri Rousseau, a fantastic French post-impressionist. He painted lush jungles and, you know, tropical plants and tigers hiding within them, but he was a taxman in Paris and never went anywhere. So the travel of the mind is equal. But yeah, you've got a very good point there.
But he was informed by imagery that he'd seen.
Sure, but he never even left Paris.
No, yeah, yeah. But I think there is. I mean, I think especially now in a world of the digital era where we are constantly scrolling and being informed from all over the place, you can get source material not having visited somewhere.
Yeah.
But I am really interested in the idea of contributing to a place and helping build a place. Almost, I want to see cities a bit like honeycombs. We kind of inherit these spaces, and then we have a choice: we either get out of here or we
Yeah, I mean that brings me on to the economics of working in places. You know, you contribute just by being there. You contribute to the economy. You know, you talk about seeds, leaving seeds. You know, when I was in New York, I was working in nightclubs then, and I was working with Muslims doing ultraviolet stuff back in the 90s, and because it was cheap in London, I could go down to Brick Lane and get, because of our migration heritage, Indian, Muslim, beg your pardon, it was cheap, but not in New York, it was 20 times the price. You know, I had to completely change the system.
But art, you know, I often overlook architecture because I work in the art world where I'm often looking at paintings or pieces or objects, but ultimately art needs space. And what really struck me about this particular collaboration was that Rose, who previously in her work uses a lot of floral motifs, there's a sort of seasonal aspect to her work, it's very connected to nature, did a really interesting about turn in her practice, which is manifest in this mural, which represents architectural shapes for the first time. And I think that's so exciting because it is also a reflection of what we're talking about. But for you, what was that like, kind of pivoting